always, have put together a tentative agenda that you have in front of you. I have moved the old business up to the top because that seems to me to be the crucial thing we need to talk about tonight. So I'll accept a motion that we accept the agenda as proposed. Is there such a motion?
Motion that we accept the agenda as
All right,
proposed.
thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, great. Well, let me just talk just a couple of minutes about background before we go into the old business, which is the status of our Police Community Relations Advisory Council, which has, we have been questioning. It's been around for, we think, 10 years now. I know there's certain members on this council who've been on that for that amount of time. Miguel helped write up the mission statement along with Penny and the mayor.
And along with Francine Vernon, and myself, many years.
10 years ago, and some of us have been on this committee for 10 years, including myself. I think Mike, the chief, joined, I think, 9 years ago or so when he became chief, and Francine's been on this committee, and Bill Hubbard have been on for that length of time. When this committee was reformed by the mayor in January of 1998, almost the first thing we talked about was the existence of what we are and what we were to be in terms of our mission statement, who were to be members of that. It's been a continual discussion of ours, and out of that discussion came a group of people who put together a proposal for the creation of the Civilian Police Review Board. And there was a letter back in April of 1999 to the village board, as well as the mayor, asking them for some definitions. We were still wondering if some of the recommendations we had made as a council to the board for changes in the mission statement had occurred or not. Those were included changes in the original mission statement, some composition of members. We had asked for some additional members, which the board, at my understanding, did make those changes. Minawiti, Odar, America, and a youth member, I believe, was the third that we added. And the other thing was we had at one point taken a vote to talk about who had voting rights on this council, and made a recommendation to change that, and that was not moved or discussed or passed by the Board of Trustees. So my interpretation at this point of where we're at is that the original mission statement, in terms of its actual mission and what its functions of this organization are still in effect, that there are a couple of changes in terms of additions of members of this council, and that the voting rights issue was not passed by the Board of Trustees. So the mayor, the police chief and the PBA members do have voting rights at this meeting. So from my judgment, that sort of tells us about where we're at. Is any disagreement with that, Mayor, from your perspective at all?
No, I think the at-large members, the 5 at-large members are Bob Wolf, Bill Hubbard, Tom Evans, Francine Vernon, and Alima Ortiz.
Yeah, that's the other change, was adding one more additional at-large.
You didn't add a youth.
No, we didn't add any. It was already there. We just selected someone to be that person, representative. Briefly, what happened for the group, and let me just review that in terms of why we haven't met since November. Formally, we had one meeting, an ad hoc meeting, called at the request of a civilian, non-member of the board, to discuss a particular complaint with the police. And as is our policy, we had decided that if the complainant wants to meet with us privately, it is their privilege, and she had asked for that, and we had a private meeting with this individual. So we have had at least one meeting since then. But what happened was, in the development of the local law, developing the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board, in its creation, in January there were going to be 2 public meetings which were held to discuss, hi friends, the adoption of this local law. At that point, because there are, in that local law, the Police Community Relations Advisory Council was to have certain responsibilities, and there was question as to what our mission statement was and its membership. It was decided by the Executive Council in conversation with several of the members here that until that law either becomes law or that proposal either becomes law or not, that it would be best not to meet because we weren't sure what our future was going to be, much less what our past was. Since that time, we've had a chance to clarify in terms of where our status is, and since that time, the Village Board of Trustees have voted and passed Civilian Police Complaint Review Board Introductory Law Number 1/2000, which I have a couple extra copies. Has everyone get a copy on the council? Okay, if some of the public would like a copy, I have a couple extra copies here of the final approved law. So the question then arises, it seems to me, if Francine, before you came, I was just saying that the mission statement is as it was originally, that will not change. So any recommendation, which several people on this side of the table and on that side of the table worked very hard on, including Tom Knight, including Carlos back there, Peter Gendron also worked very hard on making some changes, and recommendations were not incorporated. The membership was changed according to the Board of Trustees. So we did have one additional general manager, general member, and we had a representative from Podar America, and we also included expanding to the Village. But in terms of voting rights, when we had passed that rule or that recommendation to the board never reviewed that or moved on that. So in my judgment, my interpretation of the chair is that both the police chief and the PDA members might have voting rights at this matter, because it was never changed according to or accepted by the Board of Trustees. So I think that sort of tells you where we're sort of at. I mean, it looks like if you review our minutes that we've been through a lot of self-identity questions and looking to see what our role is. And obviously the creation of the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board really brings up a lot of questions in regards to what our mission is in this community, whether it should continue to exist, whether it should continue to exist in its present form. And there are some responsibilities that we have in terms of not only helping select or make recommendations to the Board of Trustees of the members of the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board, but also we are also charged with the training of the members of the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board, which is a pretty significant undertaking. So that's, do people disagree or agree with any of that interpretation, anything I had to say so far? I don't want to run just through it. That's my interpretation and my judgment of where we're at today. Tom?
Just a minute. Part of my, I think I agree with everything you said. I think in addition, we reached a point where not only have we appointed a committee to look at the Civilian Complaint Review Board, but also to look at what I call the other mission of the Police Relations Council, which was to find ways to build bridges between the community and the police. I believe Kathy Balafet chaired that committee, and there was some work that had been done on that. I think that as far as, obviously we have a guidance document, we have in terms of where we are as a body. Certainly, because, as you mentioned, because of this new body, I view it as that we now can be free to do what I believe is our primary mission, which is to build bridges between the police and the community. The other mission, which involved getting complaints, which was definitely in the mission statement, was approved by the Board of Trustees initially. I think there's, obviously, we need to look at the mission statement and the document and kind of have a constitutional convention and rewrite and revisit. Many of the things we have are very good, but I do think that it frees us, I look at it that way, it frees us to, for example, maybe perhaps get involved, I didn't bring the flyer with me, maybe cheap, with some of the things that are going on between the police and the community, and such as the community policing. We are now, as you know, probably many of you have already heard, working towards a program of bringing people up to speed to take the policing team. And it's going to be a program we've actually bringing some people on who do this professionally. And there are a lot of positive niches, positive goals, and positive things that this group could seek to do, including some of the things that we had done in the past, such as looking for the chief, at some of the policies and goals of the police department. So there still are many positive things that this body can do, aside from what has now been assigned to, I beg your pardon, so, to the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And also, as you stated, Tom, there is a role, I'd like to read it to you. It says membership.
What are you reading from, Tom?
I'm reading now from the introductory local law number 1, Civilian Complaint Review Board.
Okay.
It says, the Civilian Complaint shall exist of 7 members appointed by the village board and selected in the manner to ensure diverse and representative participation of the community and the village. 3 members shall be appointed from the list of nominees selected by the village's Police Community Relations Advisory Council. The list of nominees put forward by the council shall contain no fewer than 7 names, from which 3 members will be selected by the village board. No member of the council shall serve simultaneously on the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Members of the council who wish to be considered as nominees for the Civilian Complaint Review Board shall not participate in council discussions regarding the nominees list. So, as you outlined, I think that becomes and also, as you also said, perhaps involved in some of the training that is involved with these folks. So I think there'll be a lot on the plate of a revised or a renewed or a new body here. And I think that we need to, as far as I'm concerned, anything is on the table. And if we can certainly begin, I don't know how you want to approach it, we'll certainly, I think we need to hear from you and from some people in the community as to what direction you would like to see this go in, now that it has been partially modified. I only say partially, I think that the guts are still there.
A question to legal, Richard. Would this new law put that one section in our mission statement is now null and void? Or is it reinforced? I mean, does it?
What's the section that you're referring to?
The one about that we will take a medium for receiving complaints from the public concerning allegations of discourtesy, verbal, physical, or other abuse on the part of members of the police service.
The local law would take precedence over what had been needed, so we'll take that particular.
So, under the mission statement, section 2 is now null and
to the
void.
extent that it's inconsistent with the local law.
Okay. In looking at this, is that the
And
only?
it's also point.
What my question is that in looking at the mission statement, is that the only aspect that looks like it will?
I had to look through the whole thing. To the extent that it's inconsistent with the local law that was just passed, local law would take precedence.
Okay. Reactions to what the mayor said? Anybody?
And it's concerning the police community relations.
Excuse me, Jerry, could you please speak up?
Concerning the police community relations advisory council, the one that we are. I've been hearing that it was a court agreement back in the 70s at some time when there was a suit filed against the police to have some kind of mandated review board or advisory council. And I think that we on this board should have a copy of the original, because we may be, it seems that we're changing mandates for this council that may be mandated by a court. I mean, if it's something that the court handed down years ago for us to go by, and for us to change it, I think that we should know. Because what I'm hearing is that it was some kind of settlement with the Village of Ossining and the litigants in the case. There was an agreement made, and now that agreement was either a police advisory council or a police review board. I don't know which one it is, but whichever one it is, we need to know, because we're making laws and changing things that may be in violation of some kind of law. And I think that one of the problems I have is that we don't know, and I keep hearing about it.
I hear about it too, and I never seen anything, and I've been here the longest.
It does not, it may not have been a court order, but there was definitely a settlement between,
In the 70s?
going back to the Terrence record case.
No, prior to that.
Pardon me?
This is going
Oh,
back.
prior to that. Well, this body here, well, I'm just gonna, let me tell you how this body happened. This body was part of a settlement. it involved the Terrence Record Agreement, where it was stated and agreed that the village would set forth a police community relations council. I'm not sure whether it was sanctioned by a court. In other words, it went back to court and there was a settlement and the judge did whatever he destined on it. But it was definitely one of the components of an agreement of the Terrence Record case.
I think Jerry is referring to the disposition of the case that the local Untitled Chapter filed against the village and the village police department in the 70s. And I don't know if an advisory council was part of it, but I do remember that there was supposed to be some pamphlets that the police department was supposed to disseminate so that people would understand what their rights were when stopped or anything of that nature. So there was a series of recommendations that came up from the court. Whether it was mandated or recommendations, I don't remember. But I believe that's what Jim is referring to. So it goes before the Terrence Record.
Okay, I know I've heard Mr. Barnes speak about it. He might be able to clarify it. I don't want to presume I have some thoughts on it, but I'd rather have it come from him. I know he was there and can speak to it.
Could we ask Richard to research that and get back to us on?
I can say with certainty, however, that there's nothing extant or no order that the village is responsible to obey from that judgment. That I can say with certainty.
The 1970s.
Right.
Okay. The more recent agreement that you had, I guess it was in the late 80s, I guess, because this, I guess, began in 1990.
Yeah, 89.
Yeah, and was that, are you aware that there was a time frame of how long this organization would continue or everything?
I don't remember.
Indefinitely, I mean.
I think, you know,
Miguel was here.
with regard to the situation in, I believe it was 89 or somewhere in when we had the Terrence Record thing, an agreement was reached to settle the matter, but as I recall, this was all contingent. Suddenly went back to the Justice Department, and the U.S. Attorney basically said to the village, and correct me if I'm going off base here, but as I recall, said to the village, you can't settle a private suit of this nature. This is only the Justice Department can make this decision in a court of law, and they lost the they went to federal district court and they lost the case there, and so the gentleman who was a police officer who was involved, or his attorney said, well then the agreement is null and void because we're being prosecuted. And that's it. So I don't know.
Okay. Went to court.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, it did.
They filed federal charges, went to federal court and was found innocent in court.
That's right. Well, found it, so that the Justice Department lost the case, and as I understand,
That's right, to White Plains.
right, it went to White Plains, that then the agreement was off the table, so to speak, because the court case took precedence and so forth, and the attorney for the police officer withdrew, whatever had been stipulated to or agreed to. Now, that's my understanding of it.
But the agreement between the two attorneys concerning the creation of this body had no part in the lawsuit of that judgment. That was something that was agreed to
By the village.
By the village and the record family, I guess you would say.
So was that a case between the record family and the Village of Ossining?
They did not bring a civil suit.
So what we're hearing, so whatever agreement is, it's just agreement between the Village of Ossining and
Yeah, if the village decided to follow up on it and so forth, that was unilateral, thing on the part of the village to continue the effort to improve police-community relations. But it wasn't, my understanding was that whatever had been agreed to, the Justice Department said, number one, you cannot absolve this police officer through this private settlement, and we're going to prosecute. So at this point, the person withdrew. But I think, it's important to understand the history of it, but I guess My own personal feeling would be, you know, let's look at what we have and can we go ahead from this point on? I mean, we can talk, you know, item for item about what happened in the past. And as I understand it, this is a, you know, a future-oriented, you know, discussion. So if you want to, you know, if it's okay with everybody else, you know, let's move on.
It would seem to me that my interpretation is that we as a council have been given an additional responsibility by the board, which is the selection of, providing a list of names for nominees. That we are also invited to participate in the educational process of the review board. And the question is, and we are no longer involved in serving and receiving complaints from the public. Now, I have two questions in regards to that. And my biggest question is, what happens if between now and the creation of this, you know, civilian police complaint review board, a complaint comes up? I mean,
I think you're wrong on that, Tom. I'm sorry, but it's still in your mission statement, when you see the complaints, the review board is just that, it's a review of complaints. They may receive them, but their function by title is to review findings that were made after a complaint was filed. You know, people can seek out the review board to file a complaint or to ask questions and do that, but I think it doesn't remove this board from receiving complaints, acting on complaints, following up on complaints and everything else. The review board is just one more step to make sure that and it's done in private, is to make sure that these things were without jeopardizing legalities, personnel folders, and a lot of other different things to do it. But you still have all those functions. I don't think anything has ever been done to take any power away from this board, and I think it probably gives it a little bit more.
Well, if I understand correctly, you know, the intent anyway was to open up more avenues for people to get complaint forms, and right, they could get it at the public library, they could get it at, you know, churches, I think. I'm not quite sure on that, but then it wouldn't, you know, obviate anything if this board, you know, gave a person a complaint form. Would just be another avenue. Was that correct? Is that, you know, from, you know,
the chief's interpretation is not only taking, you know, just distribute the complaint form, but also accepting it and then reviewing the complaint. My interpretation is, looking at this law, is that
reviewing the complaint,
right,
but not reviewing the results. That may be, you know, I'm trying to encapsulate everything. I mean, it's not that easy.
right.
But you can, you know, get the complainants, listen to their complaints, hear their complaints, but it's up to the review board to review the final process and review the end of.
Would we just doubling the effort? I mean, you know, that's
I
my question. I mean,
I don't think so.
You don't think so? That's
No, because you're, excuse me, Mike, I'm sorry. But I think you're here more to assist also. Because we've had people appear here that weren't sure which way to go, or after they talked to the board, found out that their complaint was not a complaint. So, you know, you're taking it both different sides. You're helping people to, if they feel they have a complaint, to file a complaint, how to file, how it's supposed to go, and everything else, and also to see if they do have something.
well, it says here something, the report shall, this is concerning the Police Community Relations Council, says the report shall be reviewed to assure council members of the thoroughness of the findings. So that would not be appropriate in this instance. That's correct? That this body would not review the findings.
I don't know which.
Oh, I just have something here.
It's the old mission statement.
That's the original mission statement.
That's the original mission statement. Yeah.
Yes.
Part of the star.
Original and
That's the original and current, right. The only changes have been membership.
We'll see the, I wasn't sure until late this afternoon that that was the actual copy.
That's the original.
This is the original.
That's it. With the little funny scribbles on it.
That's all my script.
Yeah.
That's the one I marked.
So where it speaks here of the findings, then that might be present a conflict with the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board, okay? So I would say, you know, receiving the complaints might be one thing, but, you know, then handing it off to the official body, this body here, would perhaps might be what might be required. I don't see any problem with, you know, as the chief pointed out, of this group personally, you know, I'm only speaking personally, of this group being able to serve as a conduit for the complaint system.
And it states it very clearly, and it says, after you receive a complaint, such complaint shall be forwarded to the chief of police of the Village of Ossining, the village manager, or other appropriate bodies, for appropriate action and investigation consonant with established procedures of the Village of Ossining, the state of New York. The council shall receive a report on the findings. Now, that's where it's incumbent. So it's basically, if someone wants to come here, I don't think you have any, you should hear the case or whatever, but certainly promulgating the existence of, first of all, making people know, educating the community to what we now have. Great, if people want to come here and present a complaint through you, they can go to the police station and present it. And as far as hearing the case, at that point, I would say that no, that would not be the case. But we have very carefully set forth meetings in here to document when complaints come in, to overcome some of the problems that we had with that. I mean, supposed problems, excuse me. So that I think in terms of promulgating, helping people when they come forward in some way, perhaps, I don't know. And these are things we maybe need to redefine with the Board of Trustees. But certainly the bottom part, the council shall receive a report. That we know, then it goes right to this body, this new body, and they will, you know,
Well, that was
in a
part
lot
of the
greater
purpose.
depth than we sort of.
That was part of the purpose of having this meeting, was to begin that
Right.
redefinition, you know, to find out where we were, what was the official mission statement in terms of what had been accepted by the board, in terms of recommendations from the council, and what hadn't, and I think we understand that. Tom?
No, I just want to make sense, you know, we're talking about this mission statement here, and you have a civilian police complaint review board that has been established, and we have this existing council that was established before this, and now we're discussing mission statements and powers of what we should do and should not do. I don't see how we can even do this without even having an attorney here to make sure that we're acting properly. I mean, unless you're going to interject your feelings as to what's being said, I don't hear it. But certainly, if you're not the one, we need somebody here to say something.
Well, I
guys
think
who
that's only one point in a large mission statement that we have.
that's a big point.
Yeah, it's a big point, but I think that basically the review process has been turned over to this new body, basically. And that certainly if we were to serve, if people want to come here and give a complaint, use it as a means to get it there, they don't want to go to the police department or whatever, it might be something we can do in that regard. But as far as hearing the case or doing anything as we used to, I don't think so. I think those days are over yet.
I mean, is it fair to say that we actually even can continue to exist the way that we are existing? Because if you just need someone to do police community relations, you need a group of people together for that, and not even call them police community relations.
But that's what we want this body to do.
I know that's what you want.
Let me ask,
but
I'm sorry, let me ask the other two trustees in the room, if that's their interpretation too, of that would be Penny
Well,
and Miguel. Is that
Well,
your?
what I heard Richard Lyons say is that this document, this local law, takes precedence, and stop me if I'm wrong, Richard, takes precedence over this document, which was, you know, something else, or less than an ordinance. Is that correct?
Just by the virtue of New York State law alone, the local law takes precedence over a resolution or some other type of action.
Well, there was a local law that was passed. It was only a very short one. Then there was a mission statement that was later adopted.
But in the local law, it says nothing about this issue. In the law, even if it did, this local law would supersede the mission statement.
But Penny, can I just ask you as a board of trustee member, is your interpretation in creating the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board, is that therefore the Police Community Relation Advisory Council, we have a better name, shorter names, the council versus the board, okay? The advisory council versus the review board, let's try it that way. That the advisory council will no longer investigate or hear the complaint, that will be just accept the complaint?
That's my absolute impression, yes.
Okay.
And that was the impression that we supported the CRB under.
Miguel, do you agree with that? Absolutely. Okay, because I mean, let's be straightforward. I mean,
Yeah,
Yes.
no, absolutely.
you all are the ones who say this is what we can do. Now, we can either agree that we will continue to participate in the advisory council based on what you want this council to be. We can make recommendations to you about what we want this council to be. But if you say no, our choice is either participate or not participate. Some have chosen not to participate. Others have said, let's see what's going to happen in this meeting and future meetings and see if the board is what the advisory council is what we want it to be.
Well, I can give you a personal opinion, and that is that I feel that the Police Community Relations Advisory Council should continue to exist. I definitely see a role for it. In fact, I think it can have a perhaps even more of an impact than the Police Civilian Review Board. So, yeah, with the proviso that it does not investigate the complaints and reviews them, because that is the province of the Civilian Police Review Board, that everything else, goes. As an opinion, and I also, go along with our counsel who stated that, and, again, reinforce the fact that this document, the Civilian Police Review Board, is, takes precedence over this mission statement.
I also think that what the chief said is pretty good.
Yeah. George, you
Hey, you said somebody filed a complaint and you don't want us to investigate it. But if somebody come to me and want to file a complaint and talk about what happened,
That's fine.
because then you're giving the chief the upper hand, because if a complaint come to me and I give that complaint to the chief,
Well,
and he's gonna let the officer.
That's the way this
I'm not
board
saying
operates.
it's gonna happen, but
Yeah.
I mean, this is what
Well,
I'm
that's
saying.
that's what the law says. That this board, is going to be the investigatory, the reviewer of the chief's investigation. There's no investigative role for the advisory council.
And unfortunately, in the initial one, there wasn't either. We received the complaint and then turned it over to the police chief.
But then he was to report back to us
What good is this board?
to assure the council members of the thoroughness of the findings. The council, through their appropriate field agency, shall report to the findings of the complainant, or in some cases advise alternatives. Francine, okay.
Well, I guess the dilemma, I think, is the fact that it's very difficult for those of us who serve to really specify what we should be doing.
Well, I don't think so.
This
Go ahead.
council was first created with a charge. So when we change the charge, we need to look at, well, what is the need? And I think that's what some of the feelings that you're hearing. I know for myself, as one advisory member, I have made the decision that I would stick with this process, because very much like some of you on the village board have expressed, I feel that there are still lots of things that can be done. However, there's still lack of clarity. Taken out that piece, one has to look at what's happening with community policing. It almost runs itself with a group that's very active with that. And as a person who's been involved with it from time to time, not on a consistent basis, I think that they're doing a lot of PR work with the relationships between the community and the police to get the community members and the members of the police department to feel that they're all working for a common good. So there is public relations in that aspect too. And I don't think that we're hearing, at least I'm not hearing, enough to make it clear where do the trustees feel that there is still a gap that needs to be filled? And how can this advisory group, as is presently constructed, fill that gap?
Okay, I think that that's an excellent question, and I believe that the police advisory board and the community policing can mesh together, because everything that we originally, I mean, we foresaw perhaps community policing, and we built in this process. Like, I went back and I got my notes, some of my original notes, and we mentioned here to identify community resources and supports public safety activities, give input concerning the perceived effectiveness and appropriateness of grant applications made by the police department to various entities, enhance community understanding of the capabilities and limitations of the police department, etc. Identify gaps in services and communications, assist the police department in assessing the effectiveness of the department and its operations, which I think is very critical here, and to create dialogue and explore perceptions of the police department and the community concerning interrelationships, et cetera, et cetera. So everything that was on here originally that we discussed and everything that is on here on this document can mesh very well with the existing community policing concept. The concept is that police officers and private citizens working together can create and solve contemporary community problems related to crime, fear of crime, physical disorder, and neighborhood decay. So I think the discussions that have gone on between the police and and various groups, perhaps are informal or on a one-to-one basis, and that's okay. But that this would be the body that would be the official liaison with the community and the police and work to resolve the problems out there in the community. So I see this group.
It's a far bigger mission than merely review and complain.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I think
Yeah.
we're looking at two different groups here. You're looking at one group that's policing the community with the police. And you're looking at another group that's more or less looking into complaints that's coming from the community. You understand what I'm saying? So,
You're wrong, George.
well, I'm just saying
Okay.
basically what he
I
said.
see it.
You gotta, I'm saying, this is the way I look at it. When I go to a meeting and I hear guys stand up and say, well, I think the best way for us I'm talking about people that live in the community. This is a guy that lives in this community. He stands up and he's at a meeting and he said, well, I think that one of the police, what do you call it, police community group, and says, I think the best way for us to run the drug dealers off the corner is for us ourselves to get cameras.
To get what?
Cameras, video
Okay.
cameras,
Okay.
all right? So this is policing your community. On this, about this complaint review board is more or less complaints, I thought, was coming into this. I see it different myself, maybe.
But George, we never agree anyway. We're friends, but we never agree. You root for the Yankees, I root for the Mets. I root for the good team, you root for the bad team. There's a couple things that I think we lost sight of a long time ago, and Miguel was 100% right, and Francine got to the point, but I wanted to bring it up a little bit further. The mission statement, as the mission statement was put there, was wrong. I can't bring back complaints and findings to this board. And that was the frustrating part of when Al Moses chaired it. And the people that were here at the time can remember one incident. Something happened. Yes, something happened. We did something about it. Yes, we did something about it. Can you tell us what we did about it? No, because the officer that was charged with the violation chose for a closed meeting, meant the meeting was closed, everything that was handled was closed, we couldn't discuss it. And the frustrating part of the board at that time was that they felt they wanted to do damage control, but they didn't know what to control, what damage they had to control. And that's what it was. And that part of the mission statement And I have some revisions that we had talked about a while ago, was one of the things that's in there. It had to be changed. The other thing is that, George, this board is not a negative board. It can be a very positive board. And the thing that the police, not only in Ossining, police all over the world always end up to do is that only people publish the negatives. Yeah, I'm like everybody else in this room. I make mistakes. But you know what? I do a lot of things right. But you'll only hear about my mistakes. You'll never hear about my thing. And this is what I always felt, this board, and I have letters, because I went back when the paper foiled for our minutes for the last 2 years of minutes. I went back and I went through all my files and I pulled out the minutes, and I pulled out letters that I had sent to this board on, I need damage control on this because people are going to paper saying, this is what we're doing. And it was 100% wrong. And this is what I want this board to do. There are a lot of things that we can do, yes. You know, there's only so many times that the paper will snap the picture of the DARE graduations. After the third or fourth, it's not a biggie. And it's how many times we did bicycle trips with the thing. The youth officer right now is down in Chase Stadium with 50 youth from the Ossining area at a game, and et cetera, et cetera. That the paper's not going to always pick up on because it's not new. It's something that's always been done. But if this board went back to the matter of ubiquity, HODR, the BOE, the NAACP, the PBA, and said, this is what the cops are doing, well, that's the thing that this board should be doing. Promulgating the good things. Yeah. Realize that we're here to take the negatives. But you know what? If we had to sit here and wait for the negatives to come in, we're going to be pretty bored.
But in addition,
And that's why the thing fell apart a couple years ago, and we had to revitalize because nobody came because there was nothing to talk about. I tried to do training programs. I brought the K-9 down, I brought demonstrations down, and people sort of say, yeah, okay, yeah, right, and they went. So,
Sure. One of the problems I get with the mission statement and where we're going with this is that the mission statement says for the community to be advisors to the community and the police department, and you know, both ways. And the reason
That is a local law.
one of the problems that we get, most of the complaints I get is that why should we participate, or why should we go down and make a complaint? Nothing's done. We don't know what happened. We don't know, we don't know if this guy's doing the same thing over and over again. When we talk about this complete civilian police review board, I think it's a little different than the advisory. And one of the things I think that the advisory board is missing is the commitment to the citizens, the village, the residents in that community, because this advisory board is basically to deal with a section of the community that feels that the police department is getting away, policemen are getting away with beating up civilians, cursing, and doing things. So we don't address, we need to, in this civilian advisory board, need to give some kind of, if we're not going to be a part of the investigation, if we're not going to be reviewing, to at least to have some avenue for the community to come in to us and say, listen, this police officer hit me.
My interpretation is that if someone submitted a complaint to us, okay, that would be part of our record, which is a public record, and therefore, if anybody wanted to go back and see, is there a history of certain behavior, they could go back and say there was at least a series of 1, 2, 3, whatever number of complaints to this particular officer.
right. I think rather than focus on the individual complaint, though, but it's a systemic complaint. In other words, things that affect the entire police department. If we have a repeated, complaints against a particular police officer, this may signal that there's a systemic problem here. And then we can address that from a department-wide as opposed to focusing on that one particular individual, if that happens to be the case. But it's not, I don't see this board as being necessarily a cheerleading squad for the police department per se, or, or vice versa, but to look at issues that impact the community-wide and to offer recommendations to the chief and to the city council and to the village board, rather, as to what are some of the fixes. How can we, not have this happen again? Because the problem of the individual police officer who is brutal or corrupt or whatever it might happen to be, that can be handled, through the regular process.
But we still need to know the nature of the problem. If the problem is coming, what are we looking at? We're looking at a complaint from citizens in that community saying, this police officer is doing something, this police department is doing something. And unless this board starts listening and start adding some of this, because if you look at the mission statement,
But not to investigate that particular police officer and that particular complaint, but to hand that off and say, look, there's been in the last year, I'm exaggerating here, but just for the sake here, say, there's been 10 complaints lodged against the Ossining Police Department. We have a systemic problem here. What are we going to do about this problem, and how should it be resolved?
Yeah, but this is my question. There's nothing in this language. It says what we should do as far as the police department with complaints and other things. But it's nothing in our mission statement to say what we do as a community, what are some of the things that we're going to be doing as a community. It's all what we're going to be doing in reference to the police department and complaints. And if it's two-sided, I'm just saying that we need to have more community oriented goals, and it's not included. It's not in our mission statement include. I don't see anything in that we're going to be doing. Any direction that the mission statement said we'll be going when it comes to dealing with the community.
I think one thing I feel that the complaint it's someone filed a complaint against a police officer, and the complaint comes in. I think this board has every right, maybe not to investigate, but every right to see that complaint. Every member of this board to see that complaint and just voice their opinion, either to the chief or to the village board members on how they feel. It might be a complaint against an officer that they might know, and it might say, well, I feel this, this officer did this and this in the complaint, and they might know that officer. In their mind, they might say, well, I know that guy. He probably went through anything like that. You understand? So two sides to every story. But I think they should get the right to look at it, not investigate. We're not police officers, but just look at the complaint. And the other thing, like you said, we gotta understand one thing about both of these boards was formed differently. The police community, I get, what's it called? The police community?
The review?
Relations Advisory Council.
No, not this.
The
Review Board.
The community, I call them police community. All right, that board was formed really for people that live in the community, to police their community. I think that's where they started from, more or less. I remember when it first started being at the meetings, and there was people that was very much concerned of people standing in front of their house, a lot of,
Community policing.
yeah. A lot of activities going on, you know what I mean? And a lot of loud noise. I think this is where they started from, and more or less this board started. That's what you was talking about before, the two ones working
Merging
together.
the two, yeah.
Yeah.
Chris?
Well, I agree with Lon for a while, and some other commenting on. Certainly, it seems very clear that this board will be a different animal in terms of how we respond to complaints. The idea of investigating and following up and trying to, ensure some individual accountability. That seems like, that's a part that would be no longer part of the mission. It's already been demonstrated both by legal barriers and individual differences that we could not do that anyway. So However, even with the focus of building community and police relations, there need not be a total divorce from the area of complaints against police. And there's still things that we can do very actively. For one thing, promoting the review board, the selection process in which much of the board will be composed, I think is very important and a role that will be pretty difficult. Also facilitating the various organizations, facilitating training that the organizations in this community can receive about how they can receive complaints and ultimately direct proper action with this new board, and thereby developing more advocacy throughout the community rather than pigeonholing one group that's half functional. And also, this board may elect to do an annual check on the state of Ossining policing based on the report that the review board will generate and based on our own public records. Maybe we can do an actual surveying of complaints, nature of those complaints, and as a board, as a function of the board, make some recommendations in response to that. So that, again, there's some real important work and productive work that we can do in the area of complaints. But that really is a part of a larger mission and goal of this board, which again is to, solidify the relationship between the police and the community.
The L's list of 10 there has got a lot of fodder there. One keeping it.
If you get out and look around, you can see the relationship between the community and police is coming together pretty, when you say, Mike, pretty well. I mean, it's better than it was a year ago, all right? But the least little thing can, stop that. And I see it all. I see a relationship with the police officers and the community. It's doing good. If you come out and, and go down, downtown, you can see it yourself. But
and that's a moment we should seize on. I mean, frankly, even if there is a little overlap between what this council does and the community police, so what? I think that's a good thing.
We had an opportunity before we decided to put our hiatus. In fact, if you think about it, Chief Burton brought here took one or two, at least one, I don't think two, presentations on the community policing, and then we all did the Noble thing, and this group has been part of that. This group, the new police civilian review board is resulted from a committee from this group. Let's not sell ourselves too short. I mean, maybe you don't like what happened, but it was a result of a committee from this group.
There's also another activity that this council can support actively and promote further participation.
when the foot patrol helped a lot and the whites helped a lot, I just want whoever thought that was a good idea. That seemed to be what bring the police in this community together more, because they're out finding out what the people in the community really want. When they was in cars and what.
I would assume that actually the number of times that the civilian complaint review would be few and far between, to get into the actual complaints. I looked at, obviously once this thing gets going and the forms are out there, that might generate complaints, but I looked at this and so far I've only seen one actual filed complaint. That doesn't tell the whole story. But even if this thing were fully operational, they might have, given on a percentage basis, given 58 police officers within the town, I would say if you got 3 or 4 complaints a year that this board had to go through, that would be a lot. So really, they wouldn't have that, from my perspective, very much to do. Anyway, and that the real action would really be with this group who would, perhaps be a little more active in helping to shape the policies of the Ossining Police Department. And that's really where I see this group.
I would agree with you there, but historically, I don't think, and this is just having worked on this board 10 years and seeing transition,
Yeah.
in this board is that we have been taken seriously by, both sides, both the community nor the police. And I think you're right. If we are taken more seriously and involved in the review process of policies and stuff, then I totally agree with you. Now, that's outside of our control. I put that on your shoulders as a police commissioner, as a member of the Board of Trustees. That needs to occur more often. Mike, you've been quiet.
We
I'm
have
gonna
a
put you on the
spotty
spot. Do you want to say
record in
anything? I don't want.
I would hate to see this council, this advisory council, be disbanded. I think that it serves the community very good. It also gives, if someone does want to make a complaint against the police department, a lot of times they're hesitant to do that, to go to the police department, where they feel a lot more comfortable coming here to fill out a complaint. And I think it's important to keep this advisory council going.
Tom, you had one statement. Do you want to make anything else before we move on? Okay.
I just want to say,
Yeah, George.
what Mike just said, I think it's very important when we look at, that, again, this board, we don't have to do any investigation into a complaint, but it's just, it feels like we're part of something. We get the right to look at this complaint, and voice our opinion to.
My judgment is that all we would have the right to look at are complaints that come to us directly. The complaints that are given to the police, because it's up to the individual to decide how they want to, whether they want to submit it directly to the police or through us. At this point, we'd only have the right to look at the ones that come directly to us.
Well, we must advertise this some kind of way
Well, I
that a person
definitely agree with
can, that a person can file a grant complaint to the board, because a lot of people feel that the only place that they can file a complaint is at the police department.
Right.
They don't know.
But as you recall, we had put on the bottom of that complaint form that complaint form can be submitted either to the advisory council, which we have a post office box with that address, or submitted to the police chief. And so it's on the form now. It's up to the individual to make that decision, what they prefer to do.
Do you think in some way, I know you guess you make money to do business, but we need to start, hopefully we decide how you want to handle your, looking at the mission statement, again, in context with this here, with the new schema. I don't know if we need to do that much, but certainly we need to come up with a schema of coming up with our 7, or is it at least 7 or 7, whatever, recommendations to the other body.
What I would ask that, questions like that, where we go next, we put off the business, because that seems to be a business, we want to talk to clients.
Well, okay.
Because
Chris, we can't hear you.
direct us to.
Can't hear you. Please speak up so we can hear you. Can't hear you.
Now,
I was recommending that we move on to public comments, that these suggestions seem more appropriate for new business.
The one thing, though, that I think we should have some decision about, are we comfortable with the mission statement as it now exists? Except for those parts that are in direct conflict with local law, since we know local law would supersede that. Or are we looking to make it clearer where the areas that we're going to be involved? And I wanted to really thank Miguel for this outline. Thank you for sharing it, because to me it defines more clearly than our mission statement what is meant by building public relations and what some of the things are that we could do. And if we think this is a good step towards a better mission statement, then before we leave the discussion of the mission statement, I think that some subcommittee needs to take this and incorporate it into, this is what's going to govern this body, because you have to have some umbrella philosophy and otherwise that's going to direct you in terms of what you're doing.
I totally agree with you. My only thing is, if I would say we should do that only if we get a commitment that whatever recommendations we come forward with, that the Board of Trustees review those and either accept them or not accept them and not leave us in limbo for 2 years, which they have done historically in the past. You know, I mean,
Well, I can speak for myself on that, and I'll say that I would not let that happen.
I support Francie's recommendation. I think a subcommittee should facilitate some kind of quasi-constitutional convention, if you will. And really, even though I think it's a little more than including Miguel's comments, I think it's more revamping that will take into account Miguel has already done.
could I impose on Mr. Knight, who spent a lot of time on this, to help serve on that ad hoc?
Tom, I would have to say I would have to decline based upon past experience of sitting on a committee numerous Saturdays. I gave up my time, and I thought that we had a document in place, and the village certainly was not acting fairly by letting us know that we're not accepting what was recommended to us.
I have a lot of that correspondence and information, and as part of the minutes, I would hope that this ad hoc committee would look at those as historical evidence of the direction that we had wanted to take in the past and incorporate that as well as Miguel's suggestion. I think a subcommittee is a good idea. I don't think it's for this group to sit here and go through the whole thing, but for the subcommittee to look at it and come back to us with recommendations for change in the mission statement. Is there people who are presently here who would like to serve on that subcommittee? Chris is volunteers. Are you interested in serving on that? I'm putting you on the spot. But I'm putting you on the spot. Okay. That's two. I think we need a third. Miguel, since you have a history of helping write this organization.
Yes.
Yeah, right, yeah.
You suggested.
Yeah, okay. And Chris, can I ask you to formulate that meeting and set that up and come back to this committee by our next meeting, which would be probably about mid-September, with a recommendation on changes. Does that give you enough time? Okay, thank you. All right. Yes, Charles.
Public comment?
Uh,
No?
We're moving now to public comments, right, yes, okay. Your hand was up first, so Charlie?
Could you get a mic up here so we can get him on TV?
Okay, yeah, can you get on TV? Can you come around here?
Well,
Star, come on.
in front of,
We're gonna block the chief. Stand in front of Chief Burton.
Can I ask you to identify yourself so that the public, if they don't know you?
Charles Colbert, 123 Spring Street, former member of the advisory council.
Thank you.
First of all, the council should be aware of that before they set up another ad hoc committee, they should identify who their members are. First of all, in order to be a member of this council, you must be a village resident or employed in the Village of Ossining. That needs to be researched. Because the person that you're asking to be on that, or to lead that ad hoc committee, is neither one. Two, before you begin an ad hoc committee or even begin to vote on this proposal, you need to identify one thing. You must have 7 members to form a quorum, 7 voting members.
Charlie, you came in late. Can I just address those very quickly to you?
Sure.
Okay, all right. In conversation initially, to find out where we were at with the mayor and stuff, came to the fact that the mission statement had not been amended at all in terms of its mission, okay? That the village board had voted to change the membership, to add an additional at-large, and to add 2 organizations, all right? And they had not accepted our recommendation that you were part of, which was to restrict voting rights to 2 members. And so therefore,
What are you talking about?
when we had said there would be, that we had said that the PBA member and the chief should not, it was voted, it was a close vote if I recall, should not be voting members, all right? They had not.
I'm not talking about the police chief or the PBA.
No, I
So
know.
what are you
Let me
talking
finish.
about?
I'm talking about your issue of quorum, okay? Which we went down this afternoon or this evening. Chris and I looked over the present membership.
Mr. Evans, excuse me. Excuse me. Mr. Evans, you interrupted me and it's wrong.
No, I'm just saying.
Because you don't know
You
what I'm...
challenged our quorum tonight, and I'm saying we should have a quorum.
If you would allow me to continue, you would understand why.
Okay, please do.
Okay.
All right.
So
I'm
you're
just challenging-
challenging me on something that I haven't even gotten to yet. So you
This
can't
is a
challenge
quorum.
me yet.
Go ahead, you have,
Okay,
you have.
what I'm referring to when it comes to the quorum is that we must have 7 members, okay? And if, when you do decide to act on the proposal, you would have to choose 7 members from this body. And 4 of the members, or 3, will be taken from this body. When that happens, you will have less than 7.
No. I think your interpretation is wrong. Let me see if I am corrected. You're saying that if we recommend that the recommendation of our 7 recommendations have to come from this body? No, the list has to come from this body.
The
names
list.
on the list do not have to come from this body.
Right, the list comes from the body, but 3 names will be taken from that number. 3 of the 7, is that correct?
No, I think there's a am I misinterpreting, Charlie? Are you saying
Let's
that?
go to page 4
Of what? Which document?
of the 2001.
Okay, page 4, okay.
Local law number 1, 2000.
All right,
Go to page number 4.
I'll look at page 4.
Okay. 8, I think it's 8.5.
That's page 4, you're looking for,
8, okay, page 4, 8.5, selection and appointments.
right.
Now, from this body, you will choose 7 members.
No.
Listen.
Charlie, let me read
Okay,
it
go ahead.
slowly, okay? 3 members shall be appointed from a list of nominees selected by the village.
Right, 7 members.
No, it's a list of nominees. It doesn't have to come from this body.
You know how many people are here?
It's nominees, you know. The list of nominees before us shall contain no fewer than 7 names. Okay, no member of the all right.
Can I read this to you?
My interpretation, I'll go to legal. My interpretation is it's not members of this body. That we just come up with a list of nominees.
It's a list of 7 people that are going to be put together by this group and submitted, from which 3 will be chosen. It doesn't mean that they're going to be taken from this group. If they are going to be taken from this group, they will renounce themselves from participating in the discussion.
Right.
It doesn't say that it's going to be taken.
I'm not saying that they will all be taken. I'm talking about the end result.
Let's just, in your situation, what you're saying, if all 7 were on this board, all right, then the organizations could appoint somebody else to represent them on this board. Right. Exactly. So, I mean, it's not that we're going to go down to just 6 members and we won't have a quorum.
Right.
Okay, unless every member wants to be on that advisory council, or not on the.
Maybe, maybe not.
Maybe not. We'll have to see.
We'll have to see. So you stand the chance of running a risk, right?
There is the potential.
Okay.
But there also is the potential, you should know, that we will advertise significantly. You have my commitment to the community for people to apply to be on that list.
But you stand the chance of running a risk. Is that correct?
There is the potential.
Okay.
You
Fine.
can always run a risk, Charlie.
So we have that.
Anything. Yes.
Charlie, I wanted to make a comment also. When it's advertised to the community that there are opportunities to serve on the review board, the rules and regulations for that review board seem fairly clear. So anyone who puts their name forward that they want to be considered is doing that, understanding what's expected of them. The reason that at least I felt that we needed to look at our mission statement is if we have to do some retooling or deciding about where we're going, people need to have something to say, is this something that I wish to be a part of? And if our mission statement right now is in question, we need to present something to the public at large, as well as to those of us who currently serve, and will make a decision whether we want to continue. So I don't see that the 2 activities are in conflict. Coming up with a list of people who want to be considered from the review board, even if it's members of this body, until they are selected, they don't have to resign from this body. And this body also trying to come up with what the mission should be for consideration by the village board.
Okay, another conflict on this document is on membership. Now, as the mayor stated, it states here there will be 7 members appointed by the village board of trustees. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. My opinion, yes.
Okay. There will actually be 10 members selected, isn't that correct? Not 7? Doesn't the chief select 3 members?
No, it's still 7.
2.
3 and 2.
Well,
3, 2, and 2. 7.
okay, that's correct.
The
3,
village
2, and
board
2,
appoints
7.
2, the chief appoints 2, 1 officer.
That's right,
who's
1
an
and 1 line officer.
Line officer. And you folks appoint 7 people
That's correct.
We might select 4.
That's right. You might select 40. Okay, this is what I'm
Our
alluding
appointment may
to.
be
Okay.
in this list, too.
Okay, I'm gonna start again.
Sure.
He's correct, to a point. This board will submit 7 names. 3 of the 7 will be selected by trustees. They will select 2 at-large members, correct? That's 5 members. The chief selects a line officer and a patrolman, is that correct? That's 7. On parks, in addition to the 7 members, there will be an alternate member for each of the 3. That's total to 10. 7 plus 3 equal 10. Okay? And so the Village Board of Trustees actually selects 10 members, not 7.
Well, they have the 7 standing members and the 3 alternatives.
That's correct. Okay? So that's 10. So this is wrong. So you need to clarify that.
Let me clarify one other thing, Charlie. That is, my reading of this is no fewer than 7 names. This council could submit 50 names to the board.
That's
I'm
right.
not saying
No,
that.
you can select
Possibility.
200.
Possibility.
You can select the entire village.
Village of Ossining, but I'm saying that's a possibility.
You can select the entire village
Right.
and only choose, and they will
Can I
only
ask
pick
you
3
what-
names.
All right, continue on. We're going to give you
Okay.
3 more minutes, all
I'll
right?
give you 3 more minutes.
Yeah.
Good. Well, that was all I wanted to talk. I wanted to clarify that issue.
Okay.
And I don't think you still understand. What's that, Chief? Oh, that's mine? Something. Well, anyway, that's it. You know, you actually, the Village Board of Trustees, your police commissioners will actually select 10 people, not 7 as this thing states. So you need to change that. You will select 7 and 3 alternates. That's 10 members. Is an alternate a member? That's the question. Yes or no?
He's there, as I understand, an alternate is in the event that someone can't
Will
serve.
serve on the board, will serve on the CPCRB only when a member is unable to participate due to a conflict of interest. So,
Okay,
yeah,
but if you choose an alternate, is that person a member?
he is if the.
Okay, so then it's 10, not 7.
You would have to be, because you would have to take over.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
This document was approved by the Village Board of Trustees. This local law is not before you for change tonight. So why is it a matter of discussion? I thought you were trying to discuss matters before this board.
Because it's wrong.
But you had a public hearing, you have more than ample opportunity to appear and discuss it.
We discussed it,
That time
it
has
still
passed.
hasn't changed,
I'm
that's
sorry,
the
but
point.
that time has passed. It's the local law, it's been advertised, it's had public hearings, it's been approved.
So because it's wrong, it makes it right.
No, but if you have an object that you want to bring forward, this is not.
Well, I just did.
This body cannot change the board. The body that can change that is the Board of Trustees. They can change this law.
I'm just discussing this, I'm not telling you to change anything.
Okay.
I'm just making you aware of what I've tried to make you aware of before.
Okay, thank you for.
Now, if you can't accept that, I can't make you accept that. I can only tell you that that should be changed. Seems that, to me, like the public can't change it or can't make them change it, so maybe you can, since you want to be a part of this. And if you can't change it, then what the hell are you doing here?
Thank you. Kathy, did you want to speak, please? Do you mind coming up? Please use the microphone. Thank you.
There were a couple of, actually, 2 basic issues that I wanted to raise tonight. One has to do, and it's been mentioned by the chair, I'm glad to say, and this is the basic issue that I want to bring up, that's that this council has not been taken seriously by the village board, by the police department, or by the community for various reasons, since at least I've been aware of it, and I have a feeling that other people who were on it before me might agree. Whether we're dealing with complaints or recommendations to improve community relations, the issue is still, when the recommendations are made at the at the council meeting, it might be accepted, but nothing's ever done. That is the main reason that our group withdrew from this council, is that we did not feel that the council was given the respect it deserved and basically was ignored. Now, as far as how the community feels about the council is another issue, and that I think goes back
to the membership issue. I'm not clear, and I've read everything I can get my hands on, how these at-large members on this council are chosen. It seems that they are selected by the village board. There does not seem to be any outreach to the community. When I keep hearing over and over again that public input is requested and that advertising is made, it just doesn't happen. The issue of getting the complaint form out could have happened 3 years ago or longer ago. It's never been translated, it's never been available, it's never been advertised as available anywhere other than the police department. And similarly, some of the recommendations given by what was then the Martin Luther King Institute subcommittee of this council were said yes to at meetings and were basically ignored. So my question really is, what is this about? Why are these members that who they represent isn't clear? And what they say, the impact of what they say isn't clear. It just becomes a circular, it feels like a waste of time. I feel that the community policing group has done like a lot of the things that we were trying to get started here for 2 years and didn't get anywhere. Maybe this council's existence is never going to be taken seriously, and I don't know how to guarantee that it will, other than, promises again. So what do we do there? So I guess I'm saying two things. If you're going to go back, you need to look at whether the council has teeth. We used that saying when we talked about complaints, but I think it has to also be used when we talk about advice, because this is the advisory council. And again, we have to look at who's on this board, council, and who they represent, whether the list of the community organizations is really correct, because I have a feeling that there may be at least one organization here whose existence is in question, and Georgia, what I'm talking about. And as far as at large, I think some of the recommendations that have been made for the review board should also be looked at in terms of conflicts of interest coming up. If somebody's going to be asked to stand up to the village board and say, you really should do this and make it public, and the village board is on the other hand doing favors for that organization that are very important to the existence of that organization, I can see that as a conflict of interest. And I can see handpicking all 5 or 6 or however many at-large members there's supposed to be now, all of whom I think have their terms expired long ago, that has to be really looked at, how we're going to get people really basically to vote in people to be their representatives on this council. And I don't think that until these things are addressed, that our organization would be willing to come back.
Reaction?
Just one reaction. I think that we were preoccupied when it came to trying to do things positive. And we did try, and Kathy tried, and I think we did do some things that were positive. We did come up with some suggestions. We did participate in the creation of 2 things that became rather accepted in the community, or somewhat accepted in the community. And we were preoccupied with the other aspect, which was the review part of the whole, which again was perfectly legitimate to be preoccupied with, but I really feel that's what we were. As far as there were several things, for example, taking the police chief and the policeman off this thing, the village board just did not agree. We're sorry, but we didn't agree. And we didn't. Some of the other changes, I think, fell by the wayside in events that were going on and things that happened other than what was happening here. Certainly, we can certainly do better in terms of framing out what is happening. We're beginning here anew. We have an opportunity to come up with a mission statement that we all believe in and can move forward with, and I hope we can. And obviously, that is, I think just the opposite. I think we have proven that we do listen to this group. Some of this, as I say, some of the ideas and some of the things have to come out of this group, and or at least they were given a lift by this group, by community policing. So, I don't know. Nothing is perfect, and we certainly apologize for any mistakes that we might have made, or actually I might have made. and I think it's just time to move forward.
I guess I have to defend the at-large group.
Yeah, really. So thank you.
Kathy, the at-large group is exactly, my meaning of it is at-large, it's citizens that just came forward, and I guess being one of the longest ones on this board, if it wasn't for the at-large groups, most of these meetings wouldn't have ever taken place because they're the ones that always get. The at-large group make up two tonight as Tom and Francine, and the other one that's missing, was historically missing tonight, is Bill Huppick because he's on vacation. If it wasn't for those three at-larges, a lot of the meetings would have never gone forward. You know, everybody else that's sitting across from me and aside, they've all changed faces. There's been PBA representatives and Board of Education representatives and Porter and Medicare are new to this, the NAAC representatives, they've all changed. The at-large members are the mainstay of this board, and if we just arbitrarily took the at-large out, I think you have a hard time getting a quorum.
Jerry, sorry, then I'll talk to you.
I just want to say that I agree that the village board takes this board lightly. And at some point, you have to, if you want the board to be active and to come to the village with a solution, the village has to start listening. I'm kind of upset that the village would ask the board to make recommendations for appointments on the review board, but not let them make the actual appointments. I think that if you're trying to build a relationship, you have to give some leeway, at least have faith in the people you're actually work with. I mean, the board, I think, would be probably acting in the interest of both the community and the police department when they're basing, on who they would recommend to be on the advisory board. But when you say that the police chief, for instance, can make his appointment directly, and the village boards are making their appointments directly, but the advisory board would be the only other person that was making appointments, had to be just a recommendation. So it kind of says to this board is that we're going to let you speak, but we can't hear you. And I think that at some point, after taking into consideration all of the other times that this board have made recommendations to the village, and the village have either failed to get back, just disregarded. I know one of the things that most of the members, well, I know one of the things that we had problems with was some of the requirements for being a member on the board. Okay. Another thing that we had a problem with was when this board was originally set up, it was set up for the purpose of creating some kind of relationship between the police and the community. And at some point, we have to have some input from that community, and the village haven't stepped in that direction at all. So if you're asking this board to stay in existence, I think that at some point the village has to give this board some kind of credibility to show that they have some kind of credibility by allowing them to, on this advisory board, for instance, to make the nominations directly to the board, because I think that we would probably be acting in the best interest of both the police and the community.
Kathy, you had your hand up.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify, because I think the chief misunderstood what I was trying to say. I agree the at-large membership is really the meat of this council and is important. However, in the law and in the bylaws, there are term limits. And there are also no clear guidelines for how these at-large members are chosen. Who are they supposed to represent? That's my concern. I think that's the concern of the community. And that's what I was trying to say. Certainly, I mean, I realize that the stick-to-itiveness of the people on this board are to be admired or something. But I think that this is the piece that really needs to be clarified and made stronger if the community is going to take this board, this council, as representing it.
I would hope that in the ad hoc committee, just looking at the mission, they would also look at membership and come back to us with recommendations in terms of additional groups that need to be represented on this board from the community, so that we do have a voice and we do represent the community as a totality and not just selected organizations.
I would hope one of the things we could possibly clarify is when recommendations come from this advisory board, the format in which they are presented to the village board for implementation. Because the board does have the legal responsibility for implementation and for the ultimately for the selection of members and so forth. So I guess it would matter to me anyway, as one person on the village board, as to the format, how those recommendations came forward. If it was just some kind of general consensus at a meeting, I'm not sure that I would be somewhat confused perhaps. And I would know the sense of the group, but I couldn't act on that thing, a statement that was made at a meeting, as opposed to some sort of more formal presentation of the recommendation. And if it came to some recommendation for the administrative running of the police department, I would certainly want to run that by the person that this board has hired to run the police department, because I wouldn't want to micromanage the police department. So I think that has to be a part of the recommendation. Now, maybe that happened in the past. I don't know that, but
maybe we'll take responsibility for that as chair, okay? And say that I think it was Tom who said we're going to begin anew tonight, okay?
Right.
For the third time, all right? We're going to begin anew, all right? And literally for the third time. And my recommendation is that what we'll do in the future is these will be formal, as they were in the past at times, formal resolutions from this council to the village board. And I would hope we'll make it formal by having the secretary send a letter to the village board and the mayor saying, here's what we recommended. And we would hope, as our representative or a communication between the two, besides you and Tom and Penny, who comes with regularly, that you will be aware of our feelings, and if you need us to come and talk to you about or articulate those any further, I think any member of this board is willing to do that.
Okay.
But we do it formally with a letter saying, and we'd like a response by our next meeting, and hopefully you'll have time in your agenda to deal with these issues, because obviously we think they're pressing enough to be moved forward.
But also with the proviso that, excuse me a minute, Tom, just with the proviso, I think everybody understands that the fact that a recommendation comes forward, that doesn't not automatically bind the board to adapt it, but to hear it, discuss it,
make a decision on it, and get back to us with that decision. We've been in limbo for 2.5 years now, and all we're asking for is, let us know what your thinking is. Otherwise, we're going off like this, and we think we should be like this.
Okay.
That's all. I think that's. Am I speaking out of turn for the board members at all? The frustrations that I've been feeling. I'm just trying to articulate that. Any other issues from the community? I mean, other public comments?
I just want to just clarify.
Yes, Maxine.
Kathy said most of what I had to say, because I can't say too much tonight. But I just want to make sure that the people here are clear as to what they represent. If they represent themselves, if they represent agencies, or whatever. And their commitment really to the community. Not just to be here to say they're on this board. So I'd like to know from you, George, and you, Chris, who are you representing? Are you representing the community or what?
Well, my work speaks for itself. When I came on this board, came on this board for the community.
Okay, that's all I want to know. There's no other representation, right? And you, Chris?
I'm not sure I fully understand your question.
Well, if you don't understand that, one of the requirements I understand, I believe it's still in effect, and Charlie will probably verify it because he was with the first beginnings of this group. you have to be a resident of the Village of Ossining.
I believe it's either that or you just.
Is that right, Joe?
It's a resident or a full-time employee in the Village of Ossining.
That's all I wanted to know. Because Kathy asked the same question, and it seems like it was just,
Voting members of the
it was
council
just, you know,
must be
passed
residents
aside.
of the Village of Ossining.
But my question was quite clear. I can articulate
So
it.
it would be voting members, is actually how it reads, of the council must be residents of the Village of Ossining or have full-time employment in the village.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Any other, yes? Yes, sir.
Burnell Morris, Spring Street, Ossining. This subcommittee that is going to be formed, what's the purpose of the subcommittee? Once again, I need a clarification on
To
it.
review the mission statement and to come back and recommend to this council within 1 month or to its next meeting, changes in that mission statement as well as the membership.
With the changes in the mission and the membership, what will it play in terms of the existing local law in terms of the responsibility of the review board in terms of its place?
In terms of the actual, well, I mean, obviously, that will be part of the mission statement, is that we have to fulfill the requirements of this new local law.
Okay,
The
because
question is, what additional things do we want to make as part of
what I really wanted to ask, Tom, is
Sure.
will this change in the mission statement as well as the membership, will that also necessarily mean an amendment to the existing law to clarify the role of the review board?
Well, what it will do is this committee will come back, report to this council their recommendation for changes in the mission statement. This council will discuss it at the September meeting and make a recommendation to the board formally if there are any changes it wants to make to the present mission statement and its membership. And then the village board of trustees has to decide if they accept those recommendations or not.
So what role does the review board play in this law that's been adopted?
None at this point.
Okay. Should not be at least discussed?
Well, as soon as the issues are over, that's part of the new business, is to talk
Okay.
about appointing, getting a list together that we will submit to the
What I'm also finding a bit flawed on this is that a subcommittee was formed to draft or at least look into recommendations in terms of establishing this civilian police complaint review board. Now, it wasn't. What was the purpose of the subcommittee?
The subcommittee, as I understand it, is to look at the existing civilian, the Police Community Relations Advisory Council.
Right.
No, I meant the subcommittee prior to this
I'm
one.
sorry.
Year and a half ago, 2
Yeah,
years ago.
this one. That's all right, Miguel. No problem. No, that's okay. Yeah. Okay. My question then is, if this subcommittee was looking into the establishment and the possibility of a civilian police review board, why wasn't the relationship of the advisory council taken into consideration when this subcommittee was formed?
I'm confused, I don't understand the
The
question.
can I take a crack at it?
No, the subcommittee that was formed to draft this, exactly.
A committee was named. The committee, I think Penny was on, there were about 5 or 6 people that were on there, or more, I forget who they were. But at that point, that group split off their own subcommittee. They did, that's what they did. They assigned a group of people to come back and report to them, which happened. And then they came back, and there was a meeting here.
What would they do?
I have a flyer I found home where
What were they to come back and to report on?
on the civilian complaint review board.
Okay, let me go back to my question again. If this subcommittee, over a year ago was formed to establish this civilian police review board, this civilian police complaint review board,
One of the recommendations, right?
of course, that's what a committee would do. The question then is, why wasn't it any thought going into, besides the appointment of members onto this board from the Police Community Relations Advisory Council, why wasn't there a definition as to the responsibility or the overall existence, other than appointments of membership of the Police Community Relations Advisory Council within the context of this law for the Police Civilian Review Board?
The subcommittee or the committee was not assigned to do that. It was assigned just to come up with the recommendation.
But didn't this committee form from this advisory board? If this committee was formed from the advisory board, was most of it?
Two members, I believe. Gina Napolitano, myself, Ed Latter, George Thornton, Chris Mathias, Bill Huppick, Juliana Ortiz.
So in other words, how many active members of the advisory board were members of the subcommittee? And by the way, where is the report that came from the evaluation?
The report was the recommendation of the law itself. There were meetings that were held here. I have a flyer home where we almost filled this room with people that came to this group to hear what they proposed.
Was there, okay.
And we went over it,
Let
line by line.
me go back, because I don't want to take too long, because answers are
I'd
not
like to
being.
get some time.
Yeah, I understand that, Tom. But again, the point of it is that if you had members of this advisory board serving on the subcommittee which established it, whether or not it was expressed, that should have been taken into consideration. And when you overlook that, what you're basically saying is that this board, its only function under the law, which Mr. Lyons made very clear, supersedes your mission statement, is just appointment of members. And that's it.
No, that's not true at all. Because there's still an existing local law, and there's still an existing mission statement that was adopted by the Board of Trustees. It's still in existence, as
My
far as I know.
interpretation of what Richard said was anything in conflict,
Right.
that the local law was that will be the
The
president.
local law would supersede any conflicting legislation that was old during time.
And the only thing that seems to be in conflict, from my interpretation, and Richard can verify this, is the issue of reviewing the complaints.
As a council, so
All the other stuff is not in conflict with the local law.
Specifically, the board was created so that the civilians would have a greater opportunity to have their complaints or their perceived differences with the police department aired and investigated in a more satisfactory manner. Every other issue that's always been before this board to try to foster good relations between the police and the community is right there, and the board can continue to review them in any way that they deem appropriate, just as Miguel circulated that old memo that talked about the old qualifications for this board from years ago.
Okay, because
Everything else continues to exist except that it's conflicting.
Can I take a shot? Maybe Ernell and I are thinking on the same wavelength. You're talking about the subcommittee of the advisory council to look at what should be in the review board.
What should be in the complaint review board?
That's the essence of the law. The subcommittee sat down with them and started what they wanted to do back in the early 1998, maybe it was late 1997, I'm not sure. But it was started back then. And the essence of it was to put a basis for a review board. The review board and what the membership wanted then went to Scott McLaughlin, and Debbie wasn't a part of it at that time. There was another man or a woman, I forget, was with Randolph Scott McLaughlin.
No, it was Debbie.
It wasn't Debbie at the very beginning.
Yeah.
It went to that point of the board, the subcommittee board, if you want to just call it, this advisory council, sitting with, then putting all their thoughts and everything together, gaining some stuff that was in the Yonkers advisory review board type thing, other ones that they gained from other places, and another booklet that was eventually drawn up, was putting everything together, sitting down with Scott McLaughlin. He and then put it into the legal terms and brought it back, and that's what was brought back to the village board many different times, and then I think 3 or 4 public hearings on that. I think
Yeah.
that's what you're...
Chief,
alluding to.
Chief, I understand what you're saying.
He just
It's-
raised the question, why didn't this committee also look at it?
Exactly, in other words, that's exactly, in other words,
Legitimate question.
you
The
don't,
charge
you,
was not to do that.
okay,
The charge was to look at
okay, but the charge should have been part of it, though. That's the whole point. Because all you have defined in here for the Civilian Police Community Relations Advisory Council, basically, as it states, is appointment of members to the review board. But it's not specifically telling you who this Police Community Advisory Board is.
That's correct.
And that's what needs to be also defined in this law. I know the law has been passed, but it needs to be considered, and it should have been considered at the time the subcommittee, which was drafting this proposal, should have adopted and looked at it. Because the mission statement is virtually, even though it is somewhat connected with this law, is really a separate document in and of itself that the majority of the public, if they're looking at this local law, is going to say, what is a Police Community Relations Advisory Board, Council? That's what also is missing out of this document.
If we say we agree, which I'm not saying we do, then you're right. But what we really need to do is move forward where we are tonight.
I understand
We
that,
can't go back and look at this.
But what I'm saying is it could have
A
moved.
year and a half ago and tell this committee,
Yeah,
reconvene.
but what I'm saying is it should have been done, and that was an oversight of the subcommittee over a year ago.
Any other statements?
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I don't think we can
All
really
right.
disagree.
Any issues, complaints? Nothing, okay. Chief, you have any police procedures you want to bring up? Can I ask you to be
If
quick?
it just gets, basically, this flyer has gone around the room. I'll let the mayor explain a little bit further on the new business, but don't take this flyer and get it out. It may not be the final draft, I'm not sure. I know that Lieutenant McElroy was working on one today, and how fast it came out, and I don't know exactly where this came from. It was on a board.
It came from
See,
here.
yeah, but there was a final draft that he went up to the village municipal building, the other building, to work on around noontime or so. So I don't know if this is the final draft, so, just keep it in your hat. It's probably the same, except for change of wording and stuff like that, but I'll let the mayor explain it. That's it.
I have a request for a future meeting. For this gathering to hear more about the course that was offered at the high school, how successful it was, and whether it's going to be continued. I also understood that there was a pilot program at Pace. I guess the town police was probably more involved than the village, but I know there was a course offered at Pace, I think it was Pace, for teenagers to explore things related to police science. And I'd like us to hear more about that, since I believe that these courses were part of an effort to encourage young people to be more knowledgeable, not only about careers in these areas, but also to develop better relations with policemen in general. So it would be helpful. And I did enjoy the trainings.
Could we'll do that by next meeting, by September?
Yeah, we'll get the...
Put that on the agenda for September meeting.
And we might ask the Police Relations Council, talking about this flyer, maybe, again, here's the roles. I mean, the lieutenant's looking for help, outreach into the community.
Tell me, Chief, that program in our high school that you heard talking about, did any Spanish-speaking police officer participate in it? So did you have a...
Yeah, we had everybody what was in there. Diego was part of it.
This is going to be offered to
Latino
Latino
community.
This stuff.
No, the document.
Will the flyer be also in Spanish?
Not in full.
Yeah. Will the flyer be translated in Spanish?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right. Anything else? New business, 29 minutes left to go before they close the building. One of the things that we have is on our plate is the assignment to come up with a list of suitable candidates for the board to choose from for the creation of the review board. I'm open for discussion for 10 minutes or so about how we do that. All right? Anybody want to comment on that, or should I jump in? might be first. It seems to me that my judgment is we should probably develop a particular form so people have it, which would include, name, address, phone number, village, time in the village, education, commitments or relationships or organizations one's a member of, both religious and non-religious in the community. And maybe resume. I'd also suggest that we might want to include a request, at least a one-page statement on why they want to serve on the review board. So we have at least something to begin with as we review the candidates.
I don't think religion should play a part.
I wouldn't put down religion, but it might be organizations. That's volunteer. People want to put that down. But what I'm looking for is thinking about what are the ties these individuals have throughout the community, which could be both civic organizations, Boy Scouts, that kind of thing, BPW, this is professional women's, that sort of thing. Organization, NAACP, whatever. So we have an idea of who they might be representing or communication lines they would have to the community, because I think that's important. What about my one-page statement? Do you disagree or agree with that on why they should serve or want to serve?
One full page?
You can double space, okay? I think we need to find out, and again, I would suspect that once we get these applications, we'll review the applications, ask the applicant to come here and talk to us a bit. We can ask them questions at that time. Yes, Francine?
I was thinking though it should be the other way, that we should in our PR effort give people reasons why they want to consider to serve. The same way that people are encouraged to serve on juries because that's part of being a good citizen. And there are benefits to see that people have an opportunity to face a jury of their peers. If one believes in that, then people need to understand what the benefits are. There are certain people that will always come forward. I think an opportunity to get to people who don't normally get involved gives a good balance with these kinds of things. Like the promotion, before we've even begun to assemble lists, has to be widespread. People not only need to know about this, but be encouraged to seriously give it some consideration if they feel they have time, so that you are getting people who don't easily come forward, but may have a lot to share in being a part of this process. And I think we should encourage people to seriously think about it. And then they can write why they want to serve.
But then I think you should also have them explain how they feel about police. Because that's very important. If you choose someone that, it's two sides to every story. If you choose someone that is like the police department, I don't think it's fair for them to sit on that type of board. So you should know how they feel about the police in this community.
Well, I disagree. I think that you could dislike the police department. That's what juries do. Some juries go in there and in favor of one thing, but after discussion issues, you'll find a change in mind. One of the things I don't want to have is a bunch of people on the organization that all think alike and have the same philosophy. And I think that it's the same as just like, why should you not get somebody that dislike the police officer? You can get somebody that do like the police department.
And I think we should also be very, very cognizant of conflicts of interest.
So
That's the point of them explaining how they feel about the police department. If you get a person on there, Jerry, that don't like the police department, you best well believe they're going to vote that way.
But George,
even if they're right, even if the officer has to be right.
One of the safeguards is that you have to have a majority. Okay, and I just get kind of nervous when we say to people that you have to. We need to know what you're doing, how you're thinking, especially since you have to go through training. Because it's my understanding that they have to go through training and all these things to be it. So, you can go to jury and be on a trial for murder with misdemeanor. But the difference with even having had a misdemeanor, they would, you know, so to say that we need to have these, I'm with letting people, putting minimum qualifications, letting people come down, and then we, you know, I don't know if we investigate and make the recommendation, and then the village re-investigate, and then make the appointment. I know that if it was a voluntary thing, I wouldn't want to go along.
I think Francine's right. I think what we need to do is as we publicize this, and do need to publicize it extensively, and I don't know if there's any.
The village will help you with that.
That's what's going to ask if there's some funding for that. But
I would also say that
people,
when you put your application there, we have to do too.
Yeah.
We don't look at it, again, maybe we let two people who aren't anywhere near you vote. It could very well be that it would be two arguable points, it could be another group that you investigate or whatever. So I would think that would be help us also. So.
I think it's only to our benefit that we make sure that all the applicants understand what the qualifications are and the disqualifications are, so that there's no embarrassment on their part if they say, oh, I didn't know that was part of it, and they come forth and say, I'd like to participate. Now, we need to do it in a kind of more agreeable way than sort of a list of you must be this or that, but I think that they need to understand that, and that needs to be part of the application process. As well as, I think we need an extensive PR plan for how do we get this information out to the public. I don't think, my judgment is, I feel under pressure to move this on as quick as we can, because if, as I said, if anything ever occurs, we're in a limbo stage right now where we don't have the authority to investigate. There isn't an organization to investigate.
I don't know. I wanted to ask the council that before. I think that we're still, our law is still in force until we appoint people to the other boards.
So we can still.
I don't know. Help me, council.
Well, the thing is that you already heard a lady that came forward that wanted to voice her.
Right, but this is that she came forward before this law was
I
passed.
understand, but the legislation's been passed on that, but all the formalities of setting it up have not been accomplished
Okay,
yet.
okay.
So until such time as that takes place, then you should continue to function just as you have. You're not going to have any additional powers that you never had before.
Right, that's
But you should just continue to function as best you can for the community, and then when the other thing is set up, they'll step forward and reach you and do what they can do.
Could I, in the attempt to move things along tonight, could I impose on the council to, again, a small subcommittee of people to work on what the form might look like, to get it to you before the September meeting, so you have a chance to look at it and think about it, so you're not hitting cold with it, and then we can agree this is about what we need, the information. Also, that committee will come up with a publicity plan of how to get this information out to the community. Is that amenable, or do you want to sit for the next 20 minutes and try to work something out here?
Maybe you want to do it in not a month. Well, I guess a month is realistic.
You seem to lay out a whole list of, things for this form.
I sort of had some ideas, and I mean, again, I think it's easier to have a straw dog, so to speak, to look at, to say, yeah, we don't want that, or yeah, we do need this. I mean, that would be useful information, or not useful information. And then also, maybe we could talk a bit about how that small group, and I will impose on the committee to say, I'd like to make it the executive council, just because if anybody else wants to serve on it, put you back on another committee. Come on. Bill Hubbock, who's not here to sit on it too, and the three of us will come together and lay out what that document might look like, try to put together a strategy plan for us for advertising that position to get maximum impact.
Just like I said, I just want to clear up something. Just like I said about people that don't like police officers being on that. The same way as people, vice versa, people who have a very good relationship as firemen, people that work for the village, or summertime friends. I don't think they should serve on that board either.
I think I would like, that's a general statement, I would like to.
You're one of my friends.
I would like to talk about that as we actually have real candidates as opposed to the hypothetical, okay, at this point. I think my judgment is, and you tell me if I'm right, that one of the things we should do is when people apply, they should be willing to come down and talk to us one-on-one, and that is one of the requirements. If they don't do that, they obviously aren't interested. Now, we could set up a couple of time periods to do that, because it might have a conflict with a particular time. We'd have to make ourselves available, maybe on 2 different types of nights, because people might be members of go to other committees or have other commitments and stuff. So we we can all talk about that. We have a small subcommittee, meet with those who can't meet with us and come back. But at some point, we're going to have to sit down and talk about, all right, we have a list of X number of people. We need to determine out of that X number, how many do we want to appoint? At minimum 7, can be 10, can be 100, 200, whatever, and then go from there.
So if you keep it at 7, it puts us in a harder spot. I should say that. If you think about it.
I think that's for the group to decide what the number will be once we get. I mean, it might just be 7 candidates, and we might say we can't meet this because we think 6 are all we have. I mean, you know, and so we're not going to be able to meet this because we only have 6 that we want to recommend. Now we're going to be in conflict with it. That's another hypothetical situation. But let's just wait and see. Yes.
Do we have a schedule, time schedule for training?
No, that's
How many?
no.
So we really should have put together our thing tonight, because we put down.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. We came back next
It's going
month
to take 2
and
months
came
to
down.
get the people.
Yeah,
By
it's going
then,
to take at least 2 months, okay? 1 month for us to put our form together and our plan, and then talk about it next week or next month, approve that, implement it, and then have people turn in their applications, a deadline maybe a week before our meeting, so we'll all have an opportunity to review these applications. We do have a post office box they can be sent in there, you know, and that's a way to collect them.
But I think that some of the requirements that they're gonna have to go through time, you know, time restraints and stuff like that.
I think
Also be on that.
it needs to be well articulated, so no one is, you know, when they come here, they don't say, oh, I didn't know it was going to take that kind of time. You're right, Jerry.
maybe the initial hit, you suck them in, then you tell them. Then if they come in, then you'll go, no. Otherwise, you put that whole list out there, no one's going to do it.
Here's the thing.
I see you're going to have to finesse some of these
I don't
people.
think there's going to be one ad, so to
Well, you
speak,
want
that
to get on
we're going to
there.
use to go out and use that same type of ad for every location. There might be a poster, as an example, that goes in the library. It says, for more information, please contact with somebody's name, and they can articulate, okay? It might be that we decide we really want to take an ad out in one of the local papers, and can the village pay for that? You know, or we talk to we issue a press release from this organization.
I think we've got a lot of help in the press.
Yeah, you know, saying we need people, and here's what we're looking at, and so, I mean, there can be different avenues, but at some point, somebody needs to know, hey, you know, no surprises when they come up here and say, oh gosh, I went through all this process, and now you're telling me I've got to be, I got to comply with all training requirements. I didn't realize that was part of the requirement.
I have a question, but I didn't make
Here's my suggestion, is part of the form, we attach this document, so there's no surprises.
Not the initial advertising, but when they
No, when they ask for the form, to fill out the form, this is
absolutely.
an attachment to the form saying, this is what it's about. You need to read this to make sure you understand. If you have any questions about this, feel free to talk to X, Y, or Z. We'll have some names on their phone numbers.
This is unrelated.
Sure.
If I looked in the thing with the conviction, and it didn't define on that what a conviction is, if it's a traffic, I mean, if it's a infraction, it just says conviction.
It says criminal conviction if I read it right. That would be a crime, which would be a misdemeanor or felony, not a traffic offense or violation.
So it's declared, even a class B, whatever, the lowest misdemeanor. You say harassment or something like that.
An unclassified misdemeanor, it could be an unclassified misdemeanor.
My judgment is I don't think it's our job to go and do a search on, we'll have to take what people say. I think it would be up to the village to say if they take one of our appointees.
But that's a problem. We're gonna make the recommendation. We wanna make sure that every person we
That we need to
recommend
have
is
a
gonna
legal
be
form saying
eligible.
that we have permission to do
They
it.
should
We
have
talked
a
about
criminal
that.
record.
We talked about that before, though. That was one
Water
of
under
the
the
things
bridge.
that was brought up. You can't, you gotta think about that, because if you got a person that might have did times 15 years ago, and then, rehabilitated themselves and got their life together, I don't think, I would have looked at more or less discriminating if he qualified to be a part of this board.
But if it's a disqualification and it's part of the law, and they're disqualified, I think it's unfair to those people to say, okay, you go through this entire process, and by the way, you're going to be disqualified, but you don't make this. I mean, this is, we can't change
Same
that
thing
here
applies
right
to
now.
the police, too.
But
They can't have
basically what I'm
records either.
saying, Tom, is that you can't go back 15 years where a person have already
they can't visit.
their time, all right? And now, you have to look at one thing.
We already did that, George. It's written in here, okay? I raised those issues, it's in the law, it's over, it's done with, you know.
I understand that,
Maybe one of
but
the things this board could do
it's bad.
is to try to recommend to the village that we revisit that to become.
Because
I think any law, I think our legal counsel will say any law is changeable.
you have to think
so
about
we
what
can all-
these same people that you're talking about, the rehabilitated themselves, are the same people that put elected officials in office. All right, these are the same people that go up there, all right, and now they're registered voters. So that don't hurt the fact that they can elect people to be voted into office. But they can't be a part of this community by serving on this board after they don't got their life together. I don't think it's fair.